Well, hello there, Mr. and Mrs. America out there in internet land. How you doing tonight? My name is Brian Trippett. I am the Front Porch Conservative. Welcome to the Tuesday night session of Chattin on the Porch. A nice little fun little live stream where we all get together and talk about everything going on in the news. And oh boy, as with every day in 2024, there is a bunch of stuff to talk about. All of it very exciting, all of it very intriguing, all of it very makes you want to go, kind of like the old Arsenio Hall show. My name is Brian Trippett. I'm the Front Porch Conservative. We are on Rumble, we are on Twitter, and we are on YouTube, that quaint little alternative social media platform. People ask me all the time, why do I call it the quaint little social media platform? Very simple. They are very quaint in that they don't believe in free speech. We, on the other hand, as members of Fedora Nation, absolutely believe in free speech. We believe that you ought to be allowed to say what you want to say. Period. End argument. Somebody doesn't like it, they can tell you they don't like it. Somebody doesn't like it, they don't have to listen to it. But you still get to say it. Again, this live stream is known as Chattin on the Porch. I am your host, Brian Trippett. I am known in social media circles as the Front Porch Conservative. I am sometimes called the fine fella in the fedora. I am sometimes called the wise guy in the wide brim. More often than not, I am referred to as the common man with common sense. Everybody's starting to settle in. Looks like we got a really good crowd building up tonight. So this is going to be a very good evening. And boy, have we got a ton of stuff to talk about. Oh my goodness. Such are these days in which we find ourselves. Amazing times to be alive. Just extraordinary. Oh, let me do one last little thing here because I got to pull up something. I need to do it. Yeah, there it goes. Okay, cool. We got it now. Very good. Very, very good. We got it. Yeah, this one definitely needs to be talked about. Anyway, glad to see y'all out there. Good evening, ma'am. Good to see you. Who else is here in the house? Yes, the incomparable Miss Gypsy. And we got some down home news to talk about with you, young lady, or at least what we're hearing anyhow. Let's see who's all over on Rumble. TBA is in the house. WWG1 is in the house. Did I see Zippy? Yeah, Zippy's here in the house. Good to see everybody. Oh, goodness. Glad to see y'all here tonight. Thank you so much for stopping by the Tuesday night session of Chattin. And as usual, we've got 1,000,001 things to talk about, so we may as well just dive right in. You know, every so often, I think to myself, I'm plowing the ground here on this internet farm of mine, my little acre on the internet, such as it were. I'm toiling in the vineyard. I'm doing, whatever analogy you want to use or old-fashioned term to describe what I do. And sometimes I wonder, aside from my loyal audience, does anybody out there ever listen to me? Well, I had one of those moments last night, ladies and gentlemen, when I'm very sure that people way more important and way more influential than me were paying attention to something I said. So I want to start off by taking you back to last night's session of Chattin on the Porch. And your humble host mentioned the following. Check this out. Oh, he did go to law school. Why is this man not speaking? Hang on, y'all. Yale University. Again, why am I not speaking? Very important right there. What the heck is going on? Wait a second. Checking on something else. Gotta look at something. Okay. Now that probably fixes it. Now can everybody hear me? Hopefully. I pray everyone can hear me. Oh, come on, you. Let me guess. I need to go through that entire intro again, don't I? Oh, jeez. What a shame. Oh, no. The whole thing? Zippy, tell me no. Hi, I'm Brian Trippett. This is Chattin on the Porch, and I'm an idiot. There, how's that for redoing the intro? Okay, let me back this up a second, and I will take this back to what I was talking about just a moment ago. Yeah, Now I unboomered it. Yeah, there you go. Hi, Robert. Thanks. I feel better now. Anyway, I had a banger of an intro. That was one of my better intros I've ever done. It's not fair. Anyway, all right. Last night, every so often, as I'm plowing this little acre of internet ground that I have, I sit here and wonder to myself, aside from my loving and loyal audience, is anybody really paying attention to what I'm talking about? Is there anybody out there that listens in and says, that boy's crazy, but he's actually onto something? Well, last night, I had one of those moments where I said something very profound, as I am a wont to do. He says with such modesty. And no sooner had I said it. It's the video you didn't hear. Well, fine. Okay, well, I think I fixed the video, so I think I got that problem taken care of. Anyway, so last night I want to take you back to something that I said as it related to the immunity decision and what could possibly happen out of it. So let me get rid of that ugly face. All right, here we go. Do me a favor, folks, and check this out. Okay, now here comes the really important part. Ugh. What is going on? I can hear it on my end. Hang on, yo. Let me try one more thing here. This silly thing. No, TBA, you're not deaf. I'm just dumb. So, I think that's what it is. Okay, let's try this one more time. Okay, let me back this up. Okay. Gonna give it one more shot. Tell me if you guys can hear this. Yale University. Well, Yale's not what it used to be, I'll tell you that much. Oh, boy. All right, let's get some more reaction to this thing. Robert Barnes is weighed in on, and he brings up a very valid point. Because if Trump's lawyers want to push it, they might get the sentencing on July 11th put off for a while if Marshawn were even to consider this. And here's the point that Robert Barnes makes. The New York case alleges that all the criminal acts occurred while Trump was president in order to stay president to cover up an alleged plan to steal the presidency. Well, the New York judge never conducted the pretrial analysis SCOTUS requires in any indictment of the president. The verdict should be vacated. Oh, that is a great point. And sure enough, no sooner did we complete our session of chatting on Monday night, what happens? I'm almost sure now. I am almost sure that the powerful and the influential in internet land are listening to this live stream and paying attention to you, my audience. Ladies and gentlemen, check out this headline from the New York Times that posted last night. This is going to tell you just how prescient you can be if you pay attention to what happens on this live stream. Headline: Trump moves to overturn Manhattan conviction, citing immunity decision. Former President Donald J. Trump took the action hours after a Supreme Court ruling granted him immunity for official acts committed in office. Article by Ben Protest and William K. Rashbaum. We have the following. Donald J. Trump began an effort on Monday to throw out his recent criminal conviction in Manhattan and postpone his upcoming sentencing, citing a new Supreme Court ruling that granted him broad immunity from prosecution for official acts he took as president, according to a person with knowledge of the matter. In a letter to the judge overseeing the case, Mr. Trump's lawyers sought permission to file a motion to set aside the verdict, doing so just hours after the Supreme Court issued its landmark ruling involving one of Mr. Trump's other criminal cases. The letter will not be public until Tuesday at the earliest, at which prosecutors will have a chance to respond. The move from Mr. Trump's lawyers came 10 days before the judge was set to sentence the former president for his crimes in Manhattan, where a jury convicted him on 34 felony counts related to his cover-up of a sex scandal in the run-up to the 2016 election. Mr. Trump's lawyers asked the judge, Juan M. Marchand, to postpone the July 11th sentencing while the judge weighs whether the Supreme Court ruling affects the conviction. The effort to set aside the conviction might be a long shot. The Manhattan case centers on acts Mr. Trump took as a candidate, not as president. Well, now hold up there, boys. Hold up there, gentlemen. Now, let's just pull this back for a second. May I respectfully remind you, fellas, that wrote this article, that the payments took place after he was inaugurated. So this argument that says the case centers on acts he took as a candidate, no. He might have discussed these ideas before the election and possibly did. He might have talked to David Pecker at the National Enquirer, might have talked to Michael Cohen, might have talked to anybody else. But the payments to Cohen didn't take place until after he was inaugurated. That means we're in presidential territory, and we'll get to what that means more particularly here in a minute, going back to the article. Yet his lawyers are likely to argue the prosecutors built their case partly on evidence from his time in the White House, which is, I haven't seen the letter yet, but I wouldn't be surprised that is exactly what they argue. And under the Supreme Court's new ruling, prosecutors not only may not charge a president for any official acts, but also cannot cite evidence involving official acts to bolster other accusations. It is unclear how the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, which brought the case, will respond, or whether the judge will delay the first sentencing of an American president. Mr. Trump's effort appeared to cause at least a brief interruption. The District Attorney's Office did not on Monday make a sentencing recommendation to the judge about whether to imprison Mr. Trump, as was expected. Okay, we got a bunch of stuff to get into here. I told you the times we're living in are very interesting and extraordinarily consequential to not just this moment in the now, but into the future yet to come. We talked about this almost ad nauseum last night, but you really can't talk about this subject enough. Oh, I agree, dear. I agree. And the wheels of justice turn slowly, but daggone it, I think they're just about to turn the way they should have all along. So hang in there, darling. Reach out that hand. I got you, girl. I'll be there. I'm sorry. I couldn't help myself. Hello, Miss Chaya. How are you, darling? Good to have you here. TBA says, does that mean Navarro and Bannon cases can get out of jail, right? If I were their lawyers, I'd start looking at this. I'd be filing motions. I'm not kidding. You know, and yeah, you ask a really good question. Okay. Up until now, and I talked about this last night, the great American tradition is incoming presidents do not go after their predecessors for actions that they took while they were in office. That has been the tradition in America. Biden absolutely and without question violated that tradition. He sicked his Justice Department, and I don't care what he says denying it. I don't care what Merrick Garland says denying it. There are reports in Politico, the New York Times, and any number of different places where Biden was visibly frustrated with Merrick Garland for the fact that he wasn't moving fast enough on the case that Jack Smith was trying to bring against Trump down at because of what happened at Mar-a-Lago. Okay? So yes, Biden sicked his Justice Department on a former president of the United States, ordered a raid of his home, brought up charges related to January 6th, etc., so on. So the tradition was we don't go after former presidents for actions that they took while they were in office. Biden violates the tradition. It finally gets to the point it goes up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court more or less codified into American law what had been the tradition for 200 plus years. And honestly, it's sort of been, for lack of a better way of saying it, unspoken constitutional law. Now, I say unspoken because the Supreme Court never has had to ever rule on this question. Because, until Biden, everybody understood. You don't go after your predecessors in the White House for actions they took while they were president. Now, the ruling comes down in 6-3. The Supreme Court rules on behalf of Trump with a very interesting ruling. And the ruling goes like this. And we're going to take a look at part of the ruling here in a few minutes. If the actions are absolutely core functional things that the president's supposed to be doing, you might not agree with the decision. You may think it's full of crap. You may think the president's full of crap. But guess what? It's core constitutional function. You can't go after him for it. On the other hand, if he's engaging in an action that is not directly related to the presidency, to his core constitutional functions as president, obviously, immunity doesn't apply. If you think he's done something criminal, tally ho. Then there's that group of actions right in the middle. They might be related to core constitutional function, but they're not something you can immediately put your finger on and say, yeah, absolutely, that's something that's core constitutional function. So you got to put it through a test. And again, we're going to look at that test here in a minute. But that's what the court ruled. Now, here's what makes what Trump's lawyers did in the Manhattan case really interesting. As the article from the New York Times points out, part of the evidence that the Manhattan District Attorney used were communications that Trump made after he was in the presidency. Well, whoa. Hold on now. Wait a minute. That gets into function of office, does it not? Or at a bare minimum, that means somebody, particularly in this case, Judge Juan Marchand, ought to be making some tests to make sure that this is or is not part of core constitutional function. Okay, so Trump's lawyers did the very intelligent thing that you can and should expect them to do. They write a letter to the judge and say, Your Honor, in light of this ruling, we want permission to make a motion to you regarding the verdict and whether or not this thing ought not be thrown out altogether. Now, no one's seen the letter yet. I have a feeling it'll probably be out tomorrow. I'm dying to see what it is, to be perfectly honest, because I'd like to know what they're going to argue. I'll be very surprised if they don't argue something very close to what these boys at the New York Times think is going to be argued. But we'll see what they come out with. Now, that was last night when that was reported. So to go back to something that the last paragraph in this article from the New York Times, it is unclear how the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, which brought the case, will respond. Well, ladies and gentlemen, they responded in a manner not unexpected, but a little bit surprising. I take you to thehill.com, and this broke at about 11 o'clock this morning. Headline: Manhattan District Attorney won't oppose delaying Trump's hush money sentencing. Article by Zach Schoenfeld. We have the following. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg's office said Tuesday it won't oppose delaying former President Trump's July 11th sentencing, even as they disagree with the new attempt to set aside his hush money verdict on immunity grounds. Following the Supreme Court's decision carving out criminal immunity for former President, Trump on Monday sent a letter to the judge insisting prosecutors at the trial introduced evidence that is precluded under the Supreme Court's test. Quote, although we believe the defendant's arguments to be without merit, we do not oppose his request to file his punitive request to adjourn sentencing pending determination of his motion. Assistant District Attorney Joshua Steinglass responded in a letter filed Tuesday. Trump's sentencing is currently scheduled for July 11th, just days before he is set to officially accept the Republican presidential nomination at the party's convention the following week. But the prosecutor's response raises a strong possibility it will be pushed out at least a few weeks. Hang on, folks. If you haven't heard this news yet, I'm going to explain to you why I'm chuckling so hard. Back to the article. Steinglass requested prosecutors be provided 2 additional weeks to respond, agreeing to delay the sentencing in the meantime. That would mean Trump's sentencing wouldn't take place until at least July 24th after the convention. Trump was convicted on all 34 counts of falsifying business records for disguising reimbursements to his then fixer, Michael Cohen. Cohen paid porn star Stormy Daniels $130,000 in the lead up to the 2016 presidential election to stay quiet about an alleged affair with Trump, which he denies. Okay, well, let me finish reading this. I'll just go ahead and take it to the bottom. Unlike his 3 criminal cases that have not yet gone to trial, where Trump argues his actual charges must be tossed out because of presidential immunity, he has not claimed immunity from the hush money charges themselves. Instead, Trump asserts some of the prosecutor's trial evidence was official conduct that is immunized and could not be shown to the jury. The evidence, among other things, includes social media posts Trump sent during his presidency. This official acts evidence should never have been put before the jury, Todd Blanche and Emil Bove, the former president's attorney, wrote in their letter on Monday. Well, now, wait a minute. That may be the link to the letter. Hang on. Just for grins and giggles, let's see this thing. Are we going to get it? Oh, here it goes. How long is this thing? Okay, 1 page. Let's see what they've got. See what these boys have got. Come on, pop back up there. Okay. All right, we've got the letter. Let's take a look at it, just out of curiosities. This should be interesting. Let me see if I can enlarge this for y'all's benefit. There we go. That's better. Okay, I'm going to skip through the blah, blah, blahs and the blah, blah, blahs and the blah, blah, blahs. Dear Justice Marchand, we respectfully submit this pre-motion letter seeking to file a motion to set aside the jury's verdicts pursuant to CPL based on today's decision from the Supreme Court in Trump versus U.S. As explained below, the Trump decision confirmed the defense's position that District Attorney of New York should not have been permitted to offer evidence at trial of President Trump's official acts. We respectfully request until July 10th to submit a memorandum of law in support of this motion. Yada, yada, yada. Okay, here we go. Under Trump v. U.S., this official acts evidence should never have been set up before the jury. Consistent with arguments that we made before and during the trial, the Supreme Court held in Trump that President Trump, quote, may not be prosecuted for exercising his core constitutional powers, and he is entitled at a minimum to a presumptive immunity from prosecution for all of his official acts. The presumption applies unless the government can show that applying a criminal prohibition to that act would pose no dangers of intrusion on the authority and functions of the executive branch. District Attorney of New York cannot make that showing here. Moreover, as we have argued previously, Trump forbids, quote, the use of evidence about such official conduct even when an indictment alleges only unofficial conduct. This includes President Trump's tweets and public addresses. For that type of evidence, the Supreme Court remanded to the trial court for evaluation of whether this alleged conduct is official or unofficial. We will address that inquiry with respect to the evidence at issue here in our motion papers. It is clear, however, that Your Honor may not inquire into the President's motives or deem an action unofficial merely because it is alleged to violate a generally applicable law. The verdict in this case violates the presidential immunity doctrine and creates grave risk of an executive branch that cannibalizes itself. After further briefing on these issues beginning on July 10th, it will be manifest that this trial result cannot stand. Well, I tell you what, them boys working for Trump, they some sharp cats, and they're making an absolutely fabulous argument. Now, you might be sitting out there in internet land asking yourself the question, how did the timing of all this, how does this work? Or maybe it's a better way to say, okay, today's July the 2nd. The sentencing's supposed to happen on July the 11th. Trump's lawyers are asking for a delay. The prosecution's sitting there saying, hey, if they ask for a delay, we're not gonna give them grief about this, even though we don't think their arguments are going to amount to a hill of beans. Well, somebody a whole lot smarter than I am sort of gave a better explanation than I could ever put into words, so I'm going to read this to you. This is a tweet from Jeffrey Clark, a former official at the Justice Department under President Biden, and now out there working on behalf of trying to get Donald Trump elected to the presidency again. So here's what he's got to say about it all. This is tremendous news. Everyone, this is perhaps an elliptical lawyer speak for some of you. So let me translate. Bragg agrees that Trump has filed a motion to dismiss the New York charges in light of yesterday's immunity ruling. The Manhattan DA needed until July 24th to respond. Okay, that makes sense. Also, Bragg admits that the legal effect of Trump's ruling, plus their requested extension, meaning that Trump should not be sentenced in New York until the motion is resolved. This means that if Bragg gets his extension, which he will, meaning July 24th, the earliest Judge Marchand could deny a motion to dismiss the case and reset the sentencing would be July 25th. And that would be only after studying the matter for a single day, which would be insufficient. And that doesn't even cover oral arguments on the motion if that gets held. The Republican convention is July 15th through the 18th, so Trump will not be sentenced before the convention. On balance of all factors, the earliest Trump gets sentenced is realistically now someday in August, and in reality, the whole case should get tossed before then. Well, due respect to the Right Honorable Mr. Jeffrey Clark and the boys at the New York Times who wrote that article, they're both wrong, but for different reasons. Surprisingly, Judge Marchand didn't wait very long before he announced what he wanted to do. And what he wanted to do has more or less shocked and upended everybody in the political and judicial world. I take you at this point to Politico.com. And as I do, I'll take my first sip of the night. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, you see that headline correctly. Trump sentencing in New York delayed until September 18th. The sentencing, which had been for July 11th, will now take place less than 2 months before Election Day. Article by Erica Orden, we have the following. Dateline, New York. Donald Trump's sentencing in his Manhattan criminal case has been delayed until September 18th, so the former president can present new arguments that his conviction should be tossed out in light of Monday's Supreme Court decision on presidential immunity. The sentencing, which had been set for July the 11th, will now take place less than 2 months before the presidential election. By the way, it's a little bit, the window's a little tighter than that. Basically about 45 to 47 days. So it's really a tight window if Marchand is even thinking about doing something, which I'll get to that point in a minute. Y'all hang on. Anyway, back to this article. In a letter to prosecutors and Trump's lawyers, Justice Juan Marchand didn't elaborate on the sentencing delay, but merely set a schedule for both parties to submit briefing on the immunity argument. It came up shortly after prosecutors said they consented to the delay, even as they wrote that the argument was, quote, without merit. The delay is the first practical fallout from the Supreme Court's ruling declaring the former president have absolute immunity from criminal prosecution over actions that fall within, quote, their core constitutional powers. And they are also entitled to immunity from other official acts. Okay, it's not absolute immunity, lady, but we'll get back to that later. Though the ruling related to another of Trump's criminal cases, special counsel Jack Smith's prosecution of the former president for trying to overturn the 2020 presidential election, Trump's efforts to apply it to the Manhattan case demonstrates its impact beyond the Smith prosecution. It's far from clear that Trump can convince Marchand that the immunity ruling should have any effect on the Manhattan verdict, which found Trump guilty of falsifying business records to cover up a hush money payment to a porn star. But the delay itself is something of a victory for Trump, who has consistently sought to drag out all of his cases. It postpones the sentencing, which had been set to take place days before the RNC, to the final stretch of the general election. The second presidential debate is scheduled for September 10th, just over a week before Trump's new sentencing date. If he is elected in November, Trump is certain to argue that any criminal punishment should be suspended during his presidency. The Manhattan case stemmed from a payment, yada, yada, yada. Okay, let's see if there's anything else. All right. Now, here is a copy of the ruling, just to show you guys what this looks like. And it's signed by our favorite, Don Juan Marchand. So there you go. September 18th, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, let's talk about some of the implications of this, and let's talk about the judicial and the political aspects of this. Am I surprised by what Trump's lawyers did? Absolutely not. As Good Logic said the other night in a tweet, if they didn't do this, it'd be malpractice. Of course they're going to have to do it. Of course they ought to try to do it. What shocked me, well, it shouldn't have shocked me either, but it did. It shocked me how easily the DA's office and the judge agreed to this. We're going to get a new set of arguments in front of this judge, either in writing or presented orally or both, on the question of immunity. In other words, should this verdict even stand in light of the fact that you used certain things or things that Trump said after he was sworn in, which frankly ought to be covered under immunity, therefore you can't introduce it. And then, I mean, and I don't know what kind of arguments they're going to present, but I'd take it one step further. These actions, the payments to Cohen, took place after Trump was sworn in. Why do these not fall under actions that are related in part to core constitutional function? Why not? Now, I have a question for you guys, and I want your take on this. I sincerely do. September 18th, Marshawn's got to make a ruling, one way or the other. Either he tosses the case out, or he sentences Trump. Show of hands in chat. How many people think that Marshawn still goes through with it and tries to sentence Trump? Now, I'm serious about this. Now, we're all sitting here all giddy, from the ruling the other day from the Supreme Court, all of its ramifications and its effects and everything else. But in all seriousness, just how desperate would Juan Marshawn be to try it? WWG says nope. TBA on Rumble says nope. WWG says, maybe 50-50. Well, okay. All right. Let's see. What other comments have we got here? Gypsy says, yeah, he'd try it. He will try it. Okay. Chaya says he will cut his own nose to spite his face. I could see that. I could absolutely see that. TBA says by September, Marshawn will be looking for a retirement home by 9/18. No. He got a good gig in New York. He's not going to retire yet. He's still a relatively young man. Here's where I'm at on this right now. Just the tea leaves such as they are. Okay. I think Marshawn would like to do it. I don't think Marshawn's going to risk it. Robert says he thinks he's going to try it. And y'all might be right. I think he wants to do it. I don't know if he's willing to do it. Now, here's what I'm getting at. Let's assume for a moment that Marshawn wakes up with a bee in his bonnet. That's putting it politely. Wakes up on the morning of the 18th with a bee in his bonnet and says, by God, I don't care if he is Donald Trump, and I don't care if he is the former president. I'm locking that no-good crook up in jail. He broke the law. Keep in mind, he'll hand that down 47 days before the election. He'll hand that down right in the middle of the heat of a presidential race. He'll lay that down after everybody has been shouting it from the valleys to the tops of the mountains. Biden and his people are trying to criminalize the judicial system, and they're trying to get Trump thrown in jail. And now, if the normies out there didn't believe it before, with about 47 days to go until the election, Juan Marchand will hand them on a silver platter the biggest piece of visible evidence that anybody could see, that anybody could ever hope to see, that proves the argument that folks like me, that folks like you, that folks like Mike Davis and Jeffrey Clark and Steve Bannon and everybody else has been saying. Biden is weaponizing the judicial system to try to lock up his political opponent. And this may be true too. This may be very true with Marchand. You know he's going to be getting phone calls between now and September 18th. You know he will. I don't disagree with that in the slightest. I do not disagree with that at all. But even in the midst of all that, and again, maybe Trump derangement syndrome is just enough to make you completely lose all control of your good sense. I could point to a lot of Democrats and prove that to be true. But even Marchand's got to look at the calendar on the wall, realize how many days it is to the election, and have the sense to say, if I do this, I hate Trump's political guts, but this will put him in office. Yeah, I mean, yeah, TBA, I agree with you on Rumble. Now everyone can see it's Biden's DOJ trying to lock up his political opponents. If he does this, I mean, bless their hearts. I don't know what else you do to get people to see it that maybe aren't paying attention to it. Now let's take it one step further. Let's say he does this. Let's say he sentences Trump to jail. Let's say that he ignores every argument that Todd Blanche and every Trump lawyer is going to bring between now and the 18th of September, or whenever Marchand rules on this thing, okay? What's going to happen? Simple. Trump's going to seek an injunction, probably in federal court, on the grounds that hey, I've got this ruling over here, Trump v. U.S., and it says that only certain things can be allowed into a courtroom during the time I was president under question of immunity, and they allowed this stuff in. The judge won't undo the ruling. Trump could still delay the sentencing. But I guess my question now, and again, we're not going to know until we know, but we're here. We're at this point. Trump's lawyers filed a motion to try and get new arguments made. The DA says, go ahead, make your filing. The judge has said, fine, I'm going to put off the sentencing until September 18th. Present your arguments. We're here. May as well ask the question. Is he just that screwy enough to do it? I'm sorry. That's pretty much the only word I can come up with. Well, I can come up with other words, but screwy is probably the best way I can say it right now. Is he just crazy enough to do this? In spite of everything else, a Supreme Court decision telling him you can't do certain things and you can only do certain things, and you didn't apply any pretrial test to Trump's actions. And maybe this is true too. We don't know. We don't know yet. But at a minimum, this much we do know. A, the sentencing is put off. B, Trump goes to the Republican National Convention, the presumptive nominee, and he will emerge from it as the actual nominee without any kind of judicial interference hanging over his head for a while. C, Trump's lawyers get to make arguments with a Supreme Court case backing them up that if they take him into New York, we're going to find, I think everybody knows how impartial Marchand is, but they're going to be able to lay it in front of Marchand and say, look, man, you got a Supreme Court case that says this and this, you need to throw this thing out. And then we're going to find out just how crazy Juan Marchand is. Or maybe crazy is not the right word. Dedicated to the cause, down with the struggle. We're going to find out how much of a good Democrat brother Juan Marchand is. Now, this test that I occasionally refer to when talking about what the Supreme Court did the other day, I want to read you part of the decision that was handed down, and the part we're going to read is from Chief Justice Roberts' majority opinion. Because, I mean, and I'll go ahead and drop this in chat if you guys should ever want to look at it. I mean, no doubt you guys have probably already bookmarked it somewhere for yourself, but for the sake of being a good host, I will drop this in. Now, I will admit, I don't have this gut feeling, but then again, as desperate as the establishment is to stop Donald Trump, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody tried something. Anyway, let me grab a quick sip of water. We'll take a look at this thing. All right. As I said, the link is in YouTube and it's on Rumble if you guys want to look at this opinion in full. And yeah, TBA says, Marchand could really be stupid and try to force this through, and then he'll be hauled off by the men in white coats with butterfly nets. Cornered rats are dangerous. Well, I don't know about being hauled off by the men in white coats I think, what is it? What was the legendary place up in New York City? Bellevue? Anyway. All right, here we go with this. This is from the Supreme Court's opinion on Trump v. U.S. And again, this is from Judge Roberts' opinion. I'll dash through this for you. Determining whether a former president is entitled to immunity from a particular prosecution requires applying the principles we have laid out to his conduct at issue. The first step is to distinguish his official act from unofficial acts. In this case, however, no court has thus far considered how to draw that distinction in general or with respect to the conduct alleged in particular. Despite the unprecedented nature of this case and the very significant constitutional questions it raises, the lower courts rendered their decisions on a highly expedited basis. Because those courts categorically rejected any form of presidential immunity, they did not analyze the conduct alleged in the indictment to decide which of it should be categorized as official and which is unofficial. Neither party briefed that issue before us. And, like the underlying immunity question, that categorization raises multiple unprecedented and momentous questions about the powers of the president and the limits of his authority under the Constitution. As we noted, there is little pertinent precedent on those subjects to guide our review of this case, a case that we too are deciding on an expedited basis, less than 5 months after we granted the government's request to construe Trump's emergency application for a stay as a petition of certiorari. Grant that petition, and answer the consequential immunity question. Given all these circumstances, it is particularly incumbent upon us to be mindful of our frequent admonition that ours is a court of final review and not of first review. Zidovskis versus Clinton, 2012. Critical threshold issues in this case are how to differentiate between a president's official and unofficial actions, and how to do so with respect to the indictment's extensive and detailed allegations covering a broad range of conduct. We offer guidance on those issues below. Certain allegations, such as those involving Trump's discussions with the acting attorney general, are readily categorized in light of the nature of the president's official relationship to the office held by that individual. Other allegations, such as those involving Trump's interactions with the vice president, state officials, and certain private parties, and his comments to the general public, present more difficult questions. Although we identify several considerations pertinent to classifying those allegations and determining whether they are subject to immunity, that analysis ultimately is best left to the lower courts to perform in the first instance. Okay, so contrary to Joy Reid and everybody over at MSNBC and Rachel Maddow and everybody else, guess what? The Supreme Court is not granting some kind of blanket power of immunity or setting up new constitutional power for Trump. One of the first things they do in this case is like they say, look, You've got to distinguish between his official and his unofficial acts, and to make that determination, we're going to leave that to the lower courts, but we're going to give you some general guidance on how to do that. And that sort of gets us to the next part of this ruling. Distinguishing between the president's official actions from his unofficial ones can be difficult. When the president acts pursuant to constitutional and statutory authority, he takes official action to perform the functions of his office. Fitzgerald v. Nixon. That's the citation. Determining whether an action is covered by immunity thus begins with assessing the president's authority to take the action. But the breadth of the president's discretionary responsibilities under the Constitution and laws of the United States in a broad variety of areas, many of them highly sensitive, frequently make it difficult to determine which of his innumerable functions encompassed a particular action. And some presidential conduct, for example, speaking to and on behalf of the American people, see Trump v. Hawaii, certainly can qualify as official even when it's not obviously connected to those particular constitutional or statutory provisions. For those reasons, the immunity we have recognized extends to the, quote, outer perimeter of the president's official responsibilities, covering actions so long as they are not manifestly or palpably beyond his authority. Okay, so it seems like a fairly reasonable test. If it's core constitutional function, yeah. But how do you know if something is, maybe on the edge? Well, the Supreme Court says the immunity we have recognized extends to the outer perimeter of official responsibilities. Actions so long as they are not manifestly or palpably beyond his authority. In other words, if they kind of just touch the edges. Maybe it's not the best way of saying it, but you kind of get the idea. Anyway, back to the decision. C. Fitzgerald, In dividing official from unofficial conduct, courts may not inquire into the president's motives. Translation: why did he do something the way he did? We feel like this is wrong. Well, no. You can't get into the question of his motives. You can only judge his actions. And that makes sense. Courts should never be asked to be mind readers. All right, back to the text. Such an inquiry would risk exposing even the most obvious instances of official conduct to judicial examination on the mere allegation of improper purpose, thereby intruding on the Article II interests that immunity seeks to protect. Indeed, it would seriously cripple the proper and effective administration of public affairs as entrusted to the executive branch of the government if, in exercising the functions of his office, the president was under the apprehension that the motives that controlled his official conduct may, at any time, become the subject of inquiry, again citing Fitzgerald v. Nixon. We thus rejected such inquiries in Fitzgerald. The plaintiff there contended that he was dismissed from the Air Force for retaliatory reasons. The Air Force responded that the reorganization that led to Fitzgerald's dismissal was undertaken to promote efficiency. Because under Fitzgerald's theory that an inquiry into the president's motives cannot be avoided, we rejected the theory, observing that inquiries of this kind could be highly intrusive. Bare allegations of malice should not suffice to subject the government officials either to the costs of trial or to the burdens of broad-reaching discovery. Nor may courts deem any action unofficial because it allegedly violates a generally applicable law. For instance, when Fitzgerald contended that his dismissal violated various congressional statutes and thus rendered his discharge outside the parameter of Nixon's duties, we rejected that contention. Otherwise, presidents would be subject to trial on every allegation that an action was unlawful, depriving immunity of its intended effect. With these principles in mind, we turn to the conduct alleged in the indictment. And that's more or less where this goes. Core constitutional function, actions that are kind of on the edge of that, and then the third category is, you're doing something that has nothing whatsoever to do with your office. You don't get immunity for that. But even for the stuff that touches on the edge of it, okay, you still got to do a test to determine, is this kind of on the edge of your function? And if so, why? And that is something for the lower courts to decide. So that's where we're at, ladies and gentlemen. And one more point on this, which I think is a really good one. We're talking about all this in the context of the case up in Manhattan. But Jonathan Turley brings up a really good point, and I want to show this to you before we step off of this subject. With the immunity decision now before the D.C. court and the New York court, it's only a matter of time for Georgia to look at the implications of this opinion. The Georgia case is heavily laden with references to presidential communications and conversations, and that is a great point. Look, all kinds of things have been talked about as it relates to the Georgia case. Believe me, it's been a long time since we've talked about Drama Mama and Loverboy and all the issues swirling around that nonsense. But that said, the case itself involves actions that Trump took while he was still president. The conversations that he had with the Georgia Secretary of State, the Georgia governor, the Georgia Deputy Attorney General. Are those questions of constitutional function? Well, if he's the chief law enforcement officer of the United States and he's trying to make sure that the elections were conducted fairly and above board in the state of Georgia, then would not that therefore be a function of office? You know, you got Judge Scott McAfee down there. He's got to make that determination. So, oh yeah, they in big trouble. Big trouble. That immunity ruling is just, I'm not going to say it is, I don't want to call it a death knell because that's not really what it is. It's the Supreme Court weighing in on something that, frankly, in one sense, they should have weighed in on a long time ago. But, truth be told, I don't think they ever thought they'd have to. Small time, how you doing this evening? Dem freak out over the immunity ruling is much like hating Trump's moderate abortion stance. Overreactions. Very true. TBA says, the lower courts did not explore any of the details that they wanted to prosecute Trump for. Isn't the president sworn to uphold election integrity, especially the presidential election? All of them are in hot water. I don't disagree with you on that, dude. Well, put it like this. I don't know how much hot water they're in, but their cases are in hot water. I don't see how any of this stands at this point. I mean, even if Judge Shutkin in the D.C. case wants this thing to go forward, now she's got to take a painstaking amount of time to look at every action that Jack Boot Smith alleges is not part of Trump's core constitutional function of office and make a determination, okay, you can indict and prosecute for that. You cannot indict and prosecute for this. There ain't no way in the infernal regions of Dante's hell that Jack Smith's case in D.C. goes before a judge before November. And at the rate things are going down in Miami, Eileen Cannon just may throw out the whole thing for any number of different reasons. We haven't got into we might do this Saturday morning where I'll have some time to get into it. But old Judge Thomas laid down some breadcrumbs on behalf of Eileen Cannon, giving her kind of an argument as to why it is Jack Smith ought to be dismissed as the special prosecutor. And believe me, if you thought the immunity ruling was bad enough, read Thomas's concurrence, because I tell you what, he's not making that old man's not making anybody happy right now. Oh, the fun, as Ben Bradley used to say. Oh, the fun. Okay, well, I'll tell you what. Let me start to shift gears here. But before I do, let me do one of those ever-famous commercials that I'm fond of doing as part of my transitions. My name is Brian Trippett. I am the Front Porch Conservative, the live stream that you have found your way into, to which you're wondering, all right, I found my way in. Can I get my way out? No, you're not leaving. You just got in. You're not leaving yet. This is known as Chattin on the Porch, a live stream where we get together during the week and we talk about items going on in the news and we try to figure out what they all mean. You can drop your comments in chat. More importantly, give me a thumbs up on Rumble and YouTube. That would really help. Even better than that, don't just give me a thumbs up on Rumble and YouTube. Subscribe to my channel on Rumble and YouTube. I would love to have you as a member of Fedora Nation. And as you can see from both sides of the chat, we are a fairly friendly bunch. Feisty, fun. We'll take some good-natured shots at each other. We'll take some good-natured shots at you. But come on. Sub to the channels. Give a thumbs up. Become a part of Fedora Nation. We'd love to have you. All right. Let us shift gears. Now, this is not necessarily dedicated to Gypsy, but this news is in her backyard, so we definitely have to talk about this, as this leads into a whole bunch of other news that has been going on today. By chance, if I can get a show of hands out there in chat, did anybody happen to see today Gretchen Whitmer's statement on supporting Joe Biden and what she thinks his odds are in the state of Michigan? Just by chance, did anybody see this? Gotta ask. Come on. Give me a show of hands out there in chat. Gotta see it. This will give me a chance to drink some agua. You did see this. Okay. All right. I'm not going to ask you the other question, but you hold that thought, Gypsy. The Wicked Witch of the North. No, the Wicked Witch of the Midwest. If you want to call her the Wicked Witch of the North, fine. I call her the Wicked Witch of the Midwest. To me, it makes geographically just makes more sense. Now, TBA, we cannot call her a biatch. That's not nice. Now, look, you got to talk to Gypsy about this. I cannot speak to whether or not she's an android, a robot, or whatever she is. I'm just messing with you, TBA. Don't worry about it. It's all good. So we've had some people who've seen it. We have some people who haven't seen it. Okay. I take you to the Associated Press. Headline: Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer insists Biden can win her state and says she is behind him 100%. I'm sorry, the Associated Press got this headline wrong. How it should read is, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer insists Biden can win her state and says she's 100% behind him with a knife in her hands. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say that out loud? Because some people seem to think, that she wants to put the knife in his back and, or something, Anyway, moving on. I'm in a good mood tonight, folks. Just overlook me here. Anyhow, by Joey Capoletti, Dateline, Lansing, Michigan. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer on Monday insisted that President Joe Biden can still win her state, a key battleground in 2024, even as many national Democrats question whether Biden should move forward after his shaky debate performance. Whitmer's statement comes as many in her party question whether she could step in for Biden and run against President Donald Trump this fall. Whitmer and several other top national Democrats have publicly backed Biden since Thursday's debate. Quote, I am proud to support Joe Biden as our nominee, and I am behind him 100% in the fight to defeat Donald Trump, she said in her statement. Not only do I believe Joe can win Michigan, I know he can because he's got the receipts. He's lowered healthcare costs, brought back manufacturing jobs, and is committed to restoring the reproductive freedom women lost under Donald Trump. Now, I want to stop right there and talk about this for a second. Now, that is a pretty definitive statement. That is a pretty slamming my fist down to the table. Yes, by George, Joe Biden can win Michigan, and I'm 100% behind him. There's just one little problem with that story, and it has nothing to do with me joking about the headline. I don't know if you guys saw this the other day or not, but it definitely ought to be mentioned because it seems like that story from the Associated Press is Gretchen Whitmer's efforts to clean up the mess on aisle B. I take you to the pages of Politico to something that they call the West Wing Playbook. And I want to take you, they cover just different subjects. Call it political gossip if you want to. They cover different subjects with this, and I want to take you to the section called The Oval. So about that democracy, so they're talking about various things, and then they get down to this. A sub-headline called Michigan Blues. Another governor who's been suggested as a replacement for Biden post-debate, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. But our Jonathan Martin reports this morning that, at least for now, she's not interested. Whitmer called Biden campaign chair Jen O'Malley Dillon Friday night to confirm she has no designs on the White House and to reiterate her commitment to helping the president face what's likely to be an uphill final few months before the election. She did have one daunting message for Jen O'Malley Dillon. Jonathan Martin writes, quote, Michigan, in the wake of the debate, was no longer winnable for Biden. But Whitmer has denied delivering that warning in a not-so-subtle jab at this column in the afternoon. Quote, anyone who claims I would say that we can't win Michigan is full of shit, Whitmer wrote on Twitter. Okay. Now, I am not normally in the habit of defending anybody from Politico.com, okay? As I feel like a lot of times it's nothing more than the drop zone for people who want to put a story out there from inside Washington, D.C. That said, however, I don't think Jonathan Martin from Politico got this wrong. I think absolutely this conversation took place. I mean, look, I might not like Jonathan Martin. I might not agree with him on everything. But, I mean, I'll go back to the story for a second. Jonathan Martin reports this morning that, at least for now, she's not interested. And I want to look at the original story real quick. Hang on, guys. Let's just go right to it. Yeah, Jonathan Martin ran this story first thing Monday morning at 5 a.m. and then updated it at 2:15. So, yeah, there's no reason for me not to believe that Jonathan Martin's telling the truth here. Through whatever sources, I'm trying to find exactly. Hang on. Forgive me 1 second here, folks. Yeah, here it is. Here's the paragraph. Yeah, even more revealing is how word of the call reached me from someone close to a potential 2028 rival. This person said Whitmer phoned O'Malley with more of an unambiguous SOS to relay that Michigan, in the wake of the debate, was no longer winnable. So apparently, Jonathan Martin's source is one of Whitmer's rivals for 2028. Okay. All right. Then I might be a slight bit suspicious because maybe they're trying to plant dirt on Whitmer and get Jonathan Martin to run it. Okay. All right. I could see that. But then again, he felt like the source was credible enough. He went with it. So I wouldn't be at all surprised for Gretchen Whitmer to call up Jen O'Malley Dillon over at the Biden campaign and say, look, you've lost Michigan. Forget it. He's done. And frankly, given some of the polling that's come out, there was one poll that ran, and I think this was before the debate, like Biden down by 4 points in Michigan, and that was before the debate. I'm waiting to see the battleground state polling that's going to probably come out in the next week or 10 days. Oh, interesting. Newsom and Rice. Which are we talking? Condoleezza Rice? Which Rice are we talking about here? That's interesting. I wouldn't be surprised. A lot of people are betting on Newsom right now. And good evening, by the way, Miss Up in Connecticut. So yeah, we have cleanup on aisle one, thanks to Gretchen's Susan Rice. Okay. Now that makes a little more sense. All right. Now that makes a little more sense. Okay. Possible. TBA says Whitmer can't win Michigan. Neither can Biden. Call me full of shit now. Now I wouldn't. Well, I would call you full of shit, but that's a whole different story for different reasons. Oh, believe me, if you think this is bad, the other stuff I'm going to show you here in a minute is going to blow your mind. There is a whole lot of hand-wringing and navel-gazing and crunching of numbers and really? Now that's interesting. They're going to dust off Barack. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. You're going to dust off Barack and Michelle. Run them as a duet together. All right. The Democrat Party's version of Peaches and Herb. There you go. Now, you know I'm old using that reference. Anyway. All right, I got a story here from Axios. Remember yesterday how I said there's a lot going around that the donors in the Democrat Party are nervous and they're waiting to see what the polling is going to say? Inside the Biden team's damage control call for jumpy voters. Article by Hans Nichols and Alex Thompson. Anxious Democrat donors grilled campaign officials on a Zoom call on Monday, pressing Biden's team on how it will deal with new concerns about his fitness for office, according to 4 donors on the call. There wasn't much panic during the special call for wealthy donors, but there was a fair degree of skepticism. Donors' questions revealed deep doubts within the Democrat Party on whether Biden has the stamina, skill, and substance to go toe-to-toe with former President Trump for the next 4 months, defeat him on November 5th, and serve another 4-year term. Donors didn't find the campaign's answers totally satisfying. Quote, "It was a damage control call," one participant said. "I don't know what the pathway forward is, and I think they are trying to figure that out too," another donor told Axios. "We all saw what we saw." Campaign officials, including co-chair Jen O'Malley Dillon, pollster Molly Murphy, and finance chair Rufus Gifford, didn't try to change donors' perceptions of the debate performance. They stipulated, just like Biden himself, that he had a bad night. But they did offer an argument, and then some data on how Biden might recover. Well, I got bad news for the donors, and I got bad news for the Biden campaign itself. The results are coming in, and it's just blood all over the floor, politically speaking. I take you to Hang on. Sorry about this, folks. I was just about to make a really cool, dramatic move, and just like usual, I blew it. Woe is me. Woe is me. Hang on. I was about to be a smooth criminal, and not so much. Here we go. All right, now I can do this. Take your time there, old man. All right. Oh, crap. We've already got polling out for tomorrow. Look at this. Yahoo News. Trump up by 2. Today, CNN. Trump up by 6. Head-to-head against Biden. Throw in everybody else. Trump plus 6. USA Suffolk. Throw in everybody. Trump plus 3. Now, you did have this one poll by Issues and Insights. Biden plus 2, but everything else is just red all across the board. And now, if you're wondering what the polling average looks like, this is the head-to-head. This is the RCP average. Trump's spreading out. He's spreading out his lead. The Real Clear Politics average right now is like 2.4% head-to-head. And you know there's going to be multiple candidates. And if you throw in everybody else, Trump's lead spreads out to like almost 4 points. And I see in chat where names are names are getting dropped everywhere right now. I've heard that combination. I've heard Michelle Obama and other people. You know, the amount of, it is just insane trying to keep up with every piece of news and information that's coming out right now. Now, some of it is complete bull. Some of it's total rumor. Some of it might be partially factual. Some of it might be totally factual. It's just back and forth right now. It's madness. Now, see, I respectfully disagree with this. I don't think she would. First of all, she doesn't like the politics of the office. Second of all, she doesn't want a campaign. She has said this to more than anybody. Matter of fact, I saw one thing today. She's trying to put a group of wealthy donors together to help out Kamala. Which, she can make the phone call. She could get the money. That may be true too. I don't even know if that 90% approval of black women is even true. You're going to tell me a single mom who's African American, who's going through all the struggles of high inflation and everything else is somehow going to say, yep, this multimillionaire woman who's living in the lap of luxury and has nothing to do with my life is absolutely the person I'm voting for. They're saying Michelle, Michelle, Michelle. And again, maybe y'all are right. I just don't. Now, I know, and I love you. We you know, we'll agree to disagree, but I just don't see it. I just don't see it yet. I don't think she wants to do it. Everything I've heard, she doesn't. Now, again, take it for what it's worth. I could be hearing from people who are absolutely crazy too. This is an interesting way of phrasing it. Well, what do you mean, sir? I mean, it's just, man, you talk about bleeding blood. The Democrats are just sitting there. It's just awful. I did. I saw it. And like I said, if I'm wrong, I'll be the first one to come back here and tell you. But I just cannot see her doing this. I don't care how much. I mean, look, what incentive would she have to want to do this? That woman is a multimillionaire, the owner, with her husband, of multiple properties here in the United States and maybe even around the world for all we know. Okay? She has not a care in the world. She's living in the lap of luxury. She's vacationing wherever she wants to. She and Barack are having the time of their life. Why, in God's name, would she want to trade all of that to go back to a White House? And I don't think that she even enjoyed being in for the 8 years she was there. I don't know. Four different homes. Okay. Well, I will say this. If she's a puppet, then this is a puppet who either isn't having her strings pulled hard enough yet or is resisting against the pull. I just don't see her doing this. I really don't. Frankly, I think they're stuck with him, and there's a valid point to be made, and I'll bring it up here in a minute. It's like professional wrestling at the DNC. Biden will be stumbling around on stage only for Michelle to walk out to Sweet Home Chicago. Interesting way of putting it. WWG1 says, I know that Rumble chat is the most important chat there is. Shame that Brian can't put us up on the screen, or maybe that's a blessing. If I could figure out, and I'm not saying this to anything else, if I could figure out a way to get you guys pulled up on the screen, I'd do it. So if somebody knows a real good hack trick to make that happen, let me know, and I'll start putting y'all up on screen. Believe me, it's not because I'm trying to keep you guys, keep this, down in the struggle, but I don't know the really good way to do it. But batting that aside, anyhow, so what's going on? So what's going on out there among the Democrats in general? Well, for the first time today, an elected Democrat, publicly came out and said it's time for Joe to step aside. From Breitbart, Representative Lloyd Doggett becomes the first sitting Democrat to call for Biden to withdraw. Article by Bradley J. The first domino fell Tuesday. Representative Lloyd Doggett, Democrat of Texas, called for President Joe Biden to step down from his campaign for re-election to the White House. Doggett's announcement followed a horrendous debate performance by Biden, universally panned by media and Democrats. Quote, for more than a year, many Americans have indicated dissatisfaction with their choices in this election, Doggett said in a press release. President Biden has continued to run substantially behind Democrat senators in key states, and in most polls has trailed Donald Trump. I had hoped that the debate would provide some momentum to change that. It did not. Instead of reassuring voters, the president failed to effectively defend his many accomplishments and expose Trump's many lies. Going a little further into the article, our overriding consideration must be who has the best hope of saving our democracy from an authoritarian takeover by a criminal and his gang. Too much is at stake to risk a Trump victory, too great a risk to assume that we could not be turned around in a year, which was not turned around in the debate, cannot be turned around now. I represent the heart of a congressional district that was once represented by Lyndon Johnson. Under very different circumstances, he made the painful decision to withdraw. President Biden should do the same. See, I disagree slightly with this whole comparison of Joe Biden to Lyndon Baines Johnson. Okay? As a matter of fact, it's funny because I was thinking about it this evening. Lyndon Baines Johnson withdrew from the 1968 presidential race because of his handling of the Vietnam War, because of soldiers who were dying, because of protests at home, because of everything else. In other words, he withdrew over an issue. Biden, and here's the strangely weird part about this. Lyndon Johnson withdrew over an issue, okay? And it was an issue that was so bad, so divisive, and so much of an albatross around the neck of his presidency that he could not see any way to win, especially after the embarrassment of what happened to him up in the New Hampshire primary. Joe Biden is being asked to step aside, not because of any one issue, although I would argue the Israel-Hamas situation is something that's bitterly dividing the Democrat Party. He's not being asked to step aside because of one issue, or maybe even issues. As a matter of fact, if you stop and think about it, the left is getting everything they want out of Joe Biden. Executive orders, workarounds past the Supreme Court, getting Congress to go along with his bills, getting lots of money spent, everything. They are getting everything they want with Joe Biden. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. Blank check Biden. That's a great nickname for him, among many others. Blank check Biden. He's being asked to leave because the Democrats, and when I say the Democrats, I mean the leadership of the party, elected Democrats, big-time poobahs, etc., because elected Democrats and the media don't think he can win. Now, think about that for a minute. Like I said, with LBJ, it was cut and dry. Vietnam. His handling of Vietnam, dead soldiers coming home, the images of coffins coming back, the protests, the violence on campuses, everything else. Biden's being asked to step aside because they don't think he can win. Now, I have a question for the Democrat Party. Whose fault is that? May I respectfully remind you folks out there in the DNC and you folks in the media and everybody else that you've had, just like the Republicans, you've had all the same amount of time. You could have opened it up. You could have let debates happen. You could have let, Joe Biden have a serious challenge as opposed to Dean Phillips or Marianne Williamson. No offense to either one of them. You rigged the rules of the primaries so that Biden would be advantaged. You eliminated Iowa and New Hampshire as the first in the nation caucus and primary so you could run it down to South Carolina, where you knew Biden would have a big advantage because of the African-American vote. You set everything up to get the candidate you want. And now, when you've been exposed and it's been shown that the candidate that you wanted cannot win, Forget it. Cannot win. Cannot function. Can't put two sentences together. Is making all kinds of gaffes and mistakes and made them on a very public national stage. Now, only now do you want to get rid of him. No. You guys made this mess. You're stuck with him. And that's the great dilemma you people in the Democrat Party have right now. Can we get rid of him? Is it worth getting rid of him? Oh, you could probably still do it. Because keep in mind, you're having a nominating convention that's being done by Zoom call or whatever the hell it is around the end of this month. Okay. You could get rid of him. Is it worth it? And by the way, for all you Democrats out there that are listening to this, and you know you do, you just don't want to admit it. How about that democracy? You know, I thought you guys were all about the principle of defending democracy. Well, what about the democracy of the voters in your primaries that wanted one guy, which, by the way, were they not lied to? Didn't you lie to them? Y'all have known how bad Joe Biden is for years, and you covered it up. You made sure nobody saw it. And if they did say something about, oh, that's just a conspiracy theory, Joe's fine, there's nothing wrong with him, he's going to be okay, yada, yada, yada. You lied to them. You lied to your primary voters. And now, after having lied to them and lied to yourselves and lied to everybody else, God and the world, now you expect the people in your party, your voters, your activists, to just roll over and take whoever you shove down their throat. Yeah, all about democracy. I never want to hear you ever again talk about defending democracy. BS. Don't ever say it in front of me, because I'm going to throw this right back in your teeth every daggone time. And not only have you got people like Lloyd Doggett from Texas out there saying that he ought to step aside, you've even got Democrats admitting Donald Trump's going to win. From Breitbart, Democrat Representative Jared Golden undercuts Biden. Trump will win. Democracy will be just fine. Check this out. From Bradley J. again. Representative Jared Golden, Democrat of Maine, wrote in a Biden blistering op-ed that Donald Trump will defeat President Joe Biden. The election will be a referendum on Biden's poor economic record, and some of the Congress's best work in recent years has happened in spite of the president, not because of him. The op-ed, which ran in the Bangor Daily News, Golden writes that despite widespread Democrat panic, Biden's poor performance in the debate was not a surprise. Holy cow. He insists Biden's metaphorical faceplant did not rattle me as it did others because the outcome of this election has been clear to me for months. I don't plan to vote for him, but Donald Trump is going to win, and I'm okay with that. Oh, don't you think this old boy is not going to get a phone call from Hakeem Jeffries? Don't you think Nancy Pelosi's not going to ring him up? Jared, you're not down with the plan, man. What? Shut up. Shut up. Don't do any more interviews. When can I do an interview again? Not until we tell you. Shut up. Goodbye. Click. Woo! You talk about stepping off the reservation. And not only he's off the reservation, he's in another state, man. He might not get back into the house cafeteria. Democrats see him walking in, they might get two big guys right in front of the door. Don't you walk in here. Democrats are in there. You whatever you are, you ain't a Democrat. You just go over there and pull your brown bag lunch out and eat by yourself. Woo! He in deep doo-doo. I'm not kidding. Holy cow. This is just Oh yeah. I think I know what you're talking about, but we'll take a look at it. We'll take a quick look at it. Yeah. You got Democrats calling for him to get out. You've got Democrats, some of them admitting that Trump's going to win. You've got Democrat governors going to hold a conference call with the White House tomorrow to talk about how bad Biden's debate performance was. I mean, this is just insane what's going on right now. You have the ultimate form of a civil war going on. Then you got former candidates who ran against him. You got Andrew Yang out there. Andrew Yang is calling for the guy to get out. He's saying it's time for him to step aside. Quote, I think the Democrats would lose the House and the Senate as well as the White House if Joe Biden was on the top of the ticket. It's one reason why I believe the right thing for him to do is step aside for the good of the party and the good of the country. I personally do not want to see Donald Trump return to the White House. I see that as essentially a certainty. If Joe Biden is the nominee, many Democrats are drawing the same conclusions based on the data that's coming out after the debate. And boy, oh boy, he ain't wrong. I mean, this may be one of the biggest internal civil wars that I have watched inside the Democrat Party in ages. This is just awful. Just awful. And we got more on it here in just a second. Let me clear out some tabs, try and free up a little space. Now, Democrats are calling for him to get out. People are saying Trump's going to win. Democrat governors want a meeting with the White House. And what's old Joe doing right now? Well, he's just having more moments like this. Folks, do me a favor and check this one out. He's appearing at an appearance today.
More people die from extreme heat than floods, hurricanes, and tornadoes combined. Say that again. Combined, more people die from heat than those three other major issues. And look, right, more
combined. Say it again. Combined. Oh my God. Oh Lord. Unbelievable. Just unbelievable. And now, what's the Biden team doing? They are digging in very, very hard. I got a story here from NBC. Y'all may not have seen this, but it's not going to surprise you. Well, maybe it will, considering who it is that's being talked about. Hang on. From NBC News, Hunter Biden has joined the White House meetings as he stays close to the president post-debate. While he is regularly at the White House residence and at events, it is unusual for the president's son to be in and around meetings that his father is having with his team. Article by Kristen Welker, Monica Alba, Mike Mamoli, and Sarah Fitzpatrick, Dateline, Washington. Hunter Biden has joined meetings with President Joe Biden and his top aides since his father's return to the White House from Camp David on Monday evening, according to 4 people familiar with the matter. The president's son has also been talking to senior White House staff, these people have said. While he is regularly at the White House residence and events, it is unusual for Hunter Biden to be in and around meetings that his father is having with his team. They said that the president's aides were struck by his presence during the discussions. Hunter Biden was found guilty last month by a jury in a federal court in Delaware on gun-related charges. He remains under indictment for tax-related felonies, which he has pleaded not guilty. Shortly after the jury found him guilty, Biden returned to his home in California. One of the people familiar with the matter said Hunter Biden has been closely advising his father since the family gathered this past weekend at Camp David after Thursday's debate. This person said Hunter Biden, quote, has popped into a couple of meetings and phone calls the president's had with some of his advisors. While the person familiar with the matter said the reaction for some senior White House staff has been, what the hell is happening? Asked to comment, White House spokesman Andrew Bates said, quote, Hunter came back with the president from their family weekend at Camp David and went with the president straight into speech prep, referring to Biden's preparation with aides for remarks on the Supreme Court decision on presidential immunity. Hunter Biden's presence in and around his father's meetings comes amid questions about whether Joe should continue in his re-election campaign. Well, why do I have a feeling we know what's going on here? Why do I have a feeling old Junior is making sure that the legal meal ticket doesn't decide to check out? That's a great set of questions, TBA. TBA over on Rumble asked the following. How does a convicted felon be part of a president's cabinet? Well, he's not part of the cabinet. He is, however, inserting himself into these discussions as it relates to the campaign. Does he have security clearance? That's a great question. What kind of national security secrets are being floated past his coke-filled ears? Hunter wants to make sure Hunter absolutely wants to make sure he wants to get a pardon. Absolutely. Future mainstream media headline, Hunter Biden works relentlessly as a White House advisor, sometimes for days nonstop. Well, I just wonder what's keeping him up all that time. Okay. And not the White House, the outhouse. Oh, he's absolutely got serious skin in the game, guys. He absolutely does, TBA. He's got to make sure Daddy keeps on running for president. He's got to stay in Daddy's good graces to get the pardon. I'm sorry, this is not the concern of a son for his father. This is the concern of a con man for his mark. He wants to make sure the access and the pardon keep on flowing. Okay? All right. A couple more things on this, then we'll take a look at what Robert sent over. Everybody's talking about this. Everybody's talking about that. Everybody's talking about this person and that person and this person and that person. Is it going to be Whitmer? Is it going to be Newsom? Is it going to be Michelle? Is it going to be whoever? If there is a switch out, there's really a good, strong possibility it's going to be Kamala, if there even is a switch out. And the reason that I'm saying that, I got a couple of clips right here. This first one is a discussion between Dave Bratt, who's currently guest hosting Bannon's War Room, and his guest is Mike Howell, the director of the Oversight Project for the Heritage Foundation. And there's a real interesting question asked as it relates to campaign money. I want you guys to listen to this. Tell me what you think.
And what you alluded to some money issues too. I think I read that the Biden-Harris PAC is a joint PAC, and if someone else, if they replace someone else at the convention, that money doesn't just flow easily over to another candidate. You got any details and analysis on that one?
Right. So I think there's a little short of $100 million in the Biden-Harris campaign fund there. So what would happen is if Biden stepped down and Harris took over, she would kind of be in control of it. But I don't think anyone seriously wants a scenario in which Kamala Harris is on top of the ticket. So the real question is what happens if neither of them are running. What will happen is a lot of those donors will ask for their money back. They probably won't get it. But then you're talking about transferring it potentially to a super PAC. And a super PAC, of course, cannot directly coordinate with a political campaign. So that imposes some limitation. But what do we learn about limitations, rules, laws, and procedures over the last 3.5 years? They're advisory for the left, who has completely turned this system of government on its head and is trying to arrest not only their chief political opponent and President Trump, but have Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro sitting in jail right now as we speak, with many other political patriots serving out political.
Yeah. Hey, Mike.
Okay, so that's a good point. That's a real good point. Okay, let's assume for a moment that Biden does step aside. Well, keep in mind, all that money that's been given is given in the name of the Biden-Harris campaign. Well, if he's right, then the only person that can access that money is Kamala Harris. Well, if what is being rumored around the world's been true for the past 4 years or so, nobody in the Democrat Party wants Kamala at the top of the ticket. So let's say, for just the sake of argument, that Biden drops out, somehow Kamala is persuaded to step aside. Now you got a pot with maybe $100 million sitting in it. Now you're going to have to legally transfer that over to some kind of a super PAC, and whoever the nominee for the Democrat Party is, assuming this even happens, like he said, the PAC cannot coordinate directly with that new campaign entity. Now, are they going to do it? Probably. But technically, they're not even supposed to. If they do, we're talking serious violation of finance law. So, and again, this goes back to what I was talking about the other night, the logistics of it. Okay. The logistics. If Biden is going to be switched out, assuming he even agreed to it, how would you do it? I mean, there's the question of who's going to be the candidate staff, the national campaign staff, who's going to be raising the money. What do you do with the money that's already been donated? It's a logistical nightmare. Caroline Wren, again this evening on War Room. Not exactly the most flattering picture to start off this clip with, but here you go. Here's what she's got to say about the candidate and campaign money.
But if he steps aside, I think it has to be Kamala Harris, because there's about $100 million cash on hand in the Biden-Harris campaign. She's the only one that can spend that.
Okay, kind of a repeat of what's been said. But yeah, I mean, it's just a nightmare. So, if it gets switched out, maybe the only person that can do it is Kamala. But that also again assumes, will Joe even be willing to let himself step aside? I mean, there is an absolute civil war going on right now. You've got Jill Biden and Hunter Biden on one side, grabbing on to Joe, making sure they can't pull him out or pull him away. You've got the Democrat Party, Obama, and the media on the other side trying to pull him away. And there's poor old Joe right in the middle going back and forth between these two. That's just crazy. Absolutely crazy. All right, hang on a minute. The good Robert Lowry sent me something. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We need to talk about this. I saw this today. And I definitely making me want to revise my opinion of Mr. Governor Burgum. Okay. I have been known to be proven wrong before. I said I might not have a problem with old Burgum. Well, for the sake of fairness for everybody, this is Doug Burgum back when he was running for president. You guys need to hear this. Check this out.
We're in a Cold War with China, and we're actually at war with Russia. We just haven't sent troops yet. We're sending material, we're sending funding, we're sending advisors. The idea that if you just said, wow, I got a bargain for you, you send a little bit of money, no troops, and they'll destroy a peer competitors. I mean, 2 years ago, we thought Russia was one of our competitors as a superpower from a military standpoint. And little Ukraine has been able to take out a huge chunk of their capability. I mean, I don't call that irresponsible spending. I call that a bargain.
Point blank, do you support more funding for Ukraine?
I support us making sure that Putin does not get a win in Ukraine, because this idea that somehow, and we've got to understand as a nation, not Republicans or Democrats, that we have driven Russia into China's arms. Russia is now is China's discount gas station, and that somehow if we don't defeat Putin, it's basically handing another win to China. You can't say, oh, China's our existential threat, but let's not send money to Russia. Russia and China are absolutely connected. And then throw in North Korea, who's been meeting both with China and Russia. North Korea supplying arms to Russia. Iran, who the Biden administration gave $6 billion to in a hostage exchange, making the world totally a more dangerous place for every American traveler, every American business leader that's going abroad. You do that, and then who's supplying arms? Who's supplying drones to Russia? Iran. And the idea that somehow people are saying, oh, we shouldn't send money to Ukraine because we need to spend it on our own border. Actually, America, we can do both of those things at the same time. And it's not that hard. We can help Ukraine beat Russia, and we can secure our own border at the same time. But the real focus has to be China. That's where the real threat is.
Okay. Well, I screwed that one up. I said I could tolerate Burgum. Not now. Nope. Sorry about that, folks. I have been known to make a mistake every now and then. Forget it. It's either JD, Tulsi, or Vivek. Give me one of the three. Anyway. Hey, Bryce Cooley stopped by. Let's say hello to Bryce. I think Joe Biden will remain on this ticket and Donald Trump wins in November. However, I do think in 28, Gavin will probably win. Kamala Harris, nope. I agree with that. Just got a couple other comments real quick. I think Gavin will pick Gretchen Whitmer as his running mate in 28. On the Republican side, not sure. Maybe JD, maybe Gates. I'm very high on JD Vance, but that's an argument I don't necessarily want to get into right now. One more comment from friend Bryce. Even Mara thinks Biden loses. Yeah, absolutely. So, TBA says, can't be Vivek. His parents weren't U.S. citizens when he was born here. Got the same problem as Kamala. Ooh, okay, wait a minute. Well, all right, that's a problem. That be a problem. Okay, all right. Oh, goodness. So, yeah. Oh, guys, one last quick thing, and we're going to get out of here, I promise. This broke late this afternoon, and I want your guys' take on this real quick. Remember how we said the other day in that story in Axios that part of the plan to revitalize Biden's image is to let him do big-time interviews, in the coming days and weeks? Well, it was just announced today who Biden will be soon doing an interview with. And I am very suspicious of this. I really am. ABC News announces George Stephanopoulos has exclusive first television interview with President Biden since the debate. ABC News announces the exclusive first television interview with President Joe Biden following the presidential debate. The president will sit down on the campaign trail Friday with Good Morning America co-anchor and This Week anchor George Stephanopoulos. A first look at the interview will air Friday, July the 5th on World News Tonight with David Muir. With portions airing on Good Morning America Saturday and Sunday as well. The extended interview will air on Sunday, July the 7th on This Week with George Stephanopoulos and on Good Morning America on Monday, July the 8th. Okay. I'm very suspicious of this. Now, under normal circumstances, if I saw that kind of a headline, I would just say to myself, softball interview. No big deal. Whatever. Here's why I'm suspicious. Look, right now there are sharks in the water swimming around Biden and the Biden family. Now hang on. See, and normally I would agree with you. Normally. But here's the question that I have. And maybe I'm wrong. Fine. If I am, we'll talk about it Monday or Tuesday next week when I'll admit it. But I'm just wondering, is Biden being set up with this interview? In other words, if people in the media realize that Biden is in deep political doo-doo, is this just one more way to try to force Biden out? Now, look, let me rephrase this. A lot of people may not remember it, but how did George Stephanopoulos get his start really on the way to fame and glory in America? He was a part of the Clinton War Room in 1992. He worked for James Carville and Paul Begala. He helped run the War Room for Clinton. This guy is a pure political shill, disguised as a journalist. Okay? The fact that he is the host of This Week, which was one time hosted by the legendary David Brinkley, makes me want to puke. Okay? That show used to have class and style. Hell, it even still had class and style when Sam Donaldson was hosting it. But now ABC is sunk so low, they're letting a political hack like George Stephanopoulos host that show. But at heart, Georgie Baby is still a political hack. I just wonder if the media, or certain elements thereof, in other words, Biden thinks he's going to get a softball interview, and George just goes in there and chews him up And then the media just pounds on Biden some more, saying, hey, he can't even do an interview with George Stephanopoulos. How's he going to stand up to Donald Trump? And again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm being overly conspiratorial for the wrong reason, but I wouldn't be surprised. Anyway, it's 9:15. We've got to run. I got to let you guys get back to living your lives. Well, see, that's what I'm wondering. Again, and maybe my brain's working overdrive here, but that's what I'm wondering. Anyway, you guys have got to get out of here, so do I. It's been a wonderful night with you guys on the Electronic Front Porch. Thank you so much for stopping by. Do me a favor. If you haven't done it yet, give me a thumbs up on Rumble. Give me a thumbs up on YouTube. More importantly, if you're not subscribed on Rumble or subscribed on YouTube, give me a sub. I would genuinely appreciate it. You guys are absolutely fantastic. We will be back tomorrow night for our pre-July 4th get-together. I love you guys. I want you to have a good night. And remember the words of that great American philosopher, Tom T. Hall, when he said, it's faster horses, younger lovers, older whiskey, and more money. You guys have a great night, and we'll see you later.